Hi everyone, welcome back to the Low Res Ramble, and as you can see, I've been a bit busy. It's the EcoBoost big update. Let's go. Okay, so the elephant in the room. I haven't updated the Low Res Ramble in a good while, probably since just after Brands Hatch, where we debriefed. It was the last race with the Z-Tech, and as you can see, Z-Tech's not in it. The Z-Tech is actually at the back of my workshop there, which is up for sale incidentally. So if you've got 2K and you want a fast road spec, nice gas flowed, good headwork Z-Tech ST170 engine, get in touch. But the EcoBoost is in the car, so let's go through and show you what I've done so far. Right, I'll turn the hat round now so you can actually see the EBC brakes part of it, but they've been fantastic this year as well, and the braking performance on this car with the Z-Tech engine has been to no end, and it's going to be exactly the same even with this new engine. We're hopefully going up by about 100 horsepower, so let's have a look. First of all the changes in the engine bay. So going through, the EcoBoost engine is fitted with the gearbox, and the gearbox is running a gripper differential. That was quite unique. But the one thing I did notice on fitting this engine and the gearbox is it feels a lot lighter than the Z-Tech and the MTX75. Even the gearbox is renowned to be one of the heavier Ford gearboxes. Don't mind the mess we've got going on here. I'm just sorting out the wiring. I'll get some proper connections on them, but that's all wiring to do with the Digi-Dash, which we kind of already planned ahead for when we fitted it to the Z-Tech. But this is the 1.6 ST180 gearbox, and what I've done here is taken a lot of inspiration from AJ Howe, my good friend that races the estate in the modified Fords. So I've been going to him for a lot of advice, and effectively what I've used here to mount it is a modified version of the ST170 engine mount on this side. It's been turned upside down and drilled for the EcoBoost mountings. There is a slight tilt on it. What I am going to do is shim this mount here to bring it upward slightly, so it looks a lot better. But AJ's has his fitting exactly like that. He's never had an issue. It's good clearance to the chassis leg. The mount at the back is a modified version of the ST180 that bolts to the gearbox. And this mount here that bolts the main gearbox mount is actually a Mark III Focus mount, because the Mark III and the Mark I Focus share a lot in common. Coolant wise, now you laugh here, we share a lot in common with the Z-Tech lines obviously, but on this is going to be a bit more because there is a turbo fitted. So let's have a look at that turbo. One Turbo Technics S242 Hybrid Turbo. Now this kiddie I managed to get off of Steve Goldsmith. It's just been refurbished, brand new. So this should be good for about 300 horsepower, which is what I want. You know, this is going to be my first turbo car, so I'm going to be learning with this turbo. Now the EcoBoost do have a bit of a reputation, so we say. They call it the EcoBoom for a reason. There's a reason for that. You get a lot of driveway mappers that just put a ton of fuel in them, a ton of boost in them, and then wonder why the piston floor no longer wants to play or why the liners warp. So the plan for this is it's obviously going to be stage 3 tuned. I hate talking about stage. It's going to be dyno tuned basically with the modifications I've got. So there's going to be what I would call no staging on it. I don't give a damn about that. I just want a good, strong, reliable tune, and one that looks after the engine, but I'm going to look after it as well. We've added some extra bits on it, so let's have a look. Including this of all things, a turbo cooler. So this actually plumbs directly to the coolant lines on the turbo and effectively is a second radiator to give a bit of extra cooling to the turbo. After speaking to AJ, he noted that with everything else taken into consideration, he gained some significant cooling from this and better performance from what he had. So this should work well. Talking about cooling things, this is the AirTech Mark III Mondeo intercooler that AJ told me to get for this. I've modified the crash bar, so the original crash bar is Gonski. It was quite a heavy thing. We've got some smaller steel, welded it up with a bit of arc welding on there, so the welds aren't pretty, but they're holding very, very nicely, painted over. At the end of the day, I don't go for pretty, I go for functional. So the intercooler is bolted on the front there. We've got an oil cooler AirTech one that sits behind it, just in there, and we've got a brand new gravity radiator that's sat in there ready to go. I've got the old radiator. There was nothing necessarily wrong with it. I did run a little pressure test on it. There was no leaks, but I thought with a new setup it needs kind of treat it as a bit of a consumable. And the good thing is with the old radiator I can almost use it as a spare if I need to and carry it in my spares box. So those two lines running off the turbo there are for the turbo cooler. We're going to have to modify the downpipe slightly, so we're going to be running a 3-inch system on this. And the biggest plan in place for this, I'm going with a side exit exhausts. Flames. And the other thing we've changed on this is the ANT Steering Electronics ECU. They're based out in Portugal, and effectively what they do is they change the standard Fiesta ECUs on this and remove the PAT system completely so that they can use the EcoBoost in kit cars and everything like that. It's a good cost-effective kit. Cost me about 500 quid all in, and that includes the loom to connect up to the EcoBoost engine. Now another thing I've had to change as well, excuse me, it is a bit messy in here. The other thing I've had to change as well is the addition of an electronic throttle pedal. This is from the Fiesta and this plugs straight into the loom. So I've had to modify my pedal box and create some mountings to bolt this on. Now you would think that this old thing actually gets in the way of your foot, but after testing it, it doesn't. And it's really nice for heeling and towing anyway. But we'll run it like this and see if we're happy with it. So far, just in static testing, I've kind of played out some scenarios on the pedal box with my feet, tried moving it very quickly. This doesn't actually get in the way, and I've got it situated in a nice position. There's not actually a lot of movement on it, so I have a feeling this is going to be a bit like an on-off switch. Don't mind us, we're just sorting through this mess of a wiring at the moment anyway, wiring in the new loom on the inside to incorporate everything onto the dash. The thing to remember as well is this is effectively my first turbo car. So I'm taking a lot of advice from people, I'm doing a lot of research and a lot of reading, and it's finicky little bits like the sensor block on there. I mean, that was 20 quid just to get a vacuum line in there, to get to the vacuum sensor for the boost, to measure the boost on the DigiDash. It's all finicky little bits like that that you need to take into account when doing any sort of conversion like this. The good thing is I've got the gearbox and the engine up for sale at the moment, so I can recoup a lot of those costs back and make this a very cost-effective swap for me. Even things down to the shifter. Again, excuse the wiring at the moment, that is in progress. This shifter here is from a Mark III Ford Focus, which has a variant which does run the 1.6 EcoBoost, exactly the same engine that runs in the ST180. So there are a lot of parts that will just bolt straight in. It hasn't been as easy as I thought, but it also hasn't been as difficult as I thought. AJ, Andy Gray and everyone have been really, really helpful in this swap. And we're just coming to the end of it. The other thing that we've been very busy with in the past few months as well is launching the Driving Talk podcast with myself, Paul Harvey, and a little known racing driver known as Max Coates. That is up on Spotify, Amazon, Apple Podcasts, all the good podcast providers as well. I'll put a link into the description below, and I'll be carrying that podcast logo on the car in place of Icon. It's the Driving Talk podcast powered by Icon. We're going to be talking about motorsport, automotive, and I'll be talking a bit of salvage as well, courtesy of Silverlake, so get in touch there. And we are due to be giving EBC Racing a visit pretty soon as well to talk to Stefan and the gang down there about just what goes in to making a good professional race pad. Don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel as well. I will be going back on the vlogging again as well. The low-res rambles will be continuing. And as for racing this, we are planning to be back out at Silverstone for the last round of the modified Ford season and debuting this turbo engine. But I've got to finish doing it first, so let's go over the bits I need to do to finish this off before we can take it to Raw Motorsport. Robin Welsh, owner of the C1 Racing Club, he's going to make the exhaust for me, and then it's about taking it up to TRS to get her mapped. So the big thing that's remaining for me is concerning the turbo. Turbo Technics actually have a separate fitting kit for this S242 turbo that I only just found out about shortly after I started fitting the engine and turbo up. So that's on order from Turbo Technics. Ultimately, I'm kind of at their mercy in terms of when it's actually going to arrive. So there'll be a pipe that goes onto the front of the turbo, that comes round. There'll be a drop-off valve for the recirc valve. That'll also go down to the boost pipe that's very carefully curled round the drive shaft down there as well. So it's going to be a bit tight at the back here, but we'll work with it. We've just then got to get all the coolant pipes together. I've got a three-way pipe on its way for that fitting there. I've got a three-way pipe on its way for that fitting there for the turbo cooler to be incorporated, and then that's the coolant circuit done and good to go. it's really just the finishing touches on here, as you know, just to get it physically starting. There's already a map on, there'll be a low boost map on there, so this will start and run absolutely fine, a standard ST180 map. So at least I'll be able to start the car. And all I'm missing now is a fuel fitting that goes into the top of the engine. Hopefully Sam Daffin's sorting us out with one of those. I just then need to get a line made from that round to there. I can set the fuel pressure and then we're good to start this engine. So we're nearly there, folks. That kind of sums up the EcoBoost bit in one go. Apologies for not vlogging it properly, but get yourself down into the comments below. Ask us any questions about how this EcoBoost build came about, and we'll go from there and put it in our next video. But for now, cheers guys.